Happy Wednesday to you, NIO fam. It's Wednesday, October 8th, 2025. The market's been closed for a little bit, and I wanted to wait and see what the data would look like. We've got over 71 million shares traded, so not a huge trade volume day, and yet we continue to see NIO looking strong as it continues to consolidate before perhaps our next move up. $7.84 at the close. It's after hours a little bit down from there, but this is what I noticed this morning pre-market. You had a couple of green candles, and then right at the beginning of the day, I think we had 780 on the top of one of these 5-minute incremental window wicks. And so it wasn't surprising to see the stock price hold nicely or consolidate and slowly move up to that point throughout the course of the day, especially on the low trade volume. Very positive, bullish in my view, in my opinion. So we'll keep tracking it here, short term as well as long term. In fact, Tuesdays normally I would have shared insurance registration data, but I wanted to highlight this since this was from my Monday video where I talked about maybe we'll see the $8 to $10 range hit by NIO this week. PB with the comment here talking about the numbers over the holiday. And so I wanted to point this out or reiterate or let people know if they aren't aware of it. I believe that once a customer in China takes delivery of a vehicle, they have 3 work days afterwards to get insurance registrations through government offices. Now, if government offices were closed through the entire holiday, we may not see any data at all for insurance registrations from the holiday week, even though NIO continued to deliver cars to users. That will throw off the weekly data compared to recent months, but I'll try to figure things out afterwards since I didn't have clarity, or rather at the time I posted, I said I don't have clarity. And then I want to offer a few things. This from Will, China Driven, with this post and talking about the reality of just how crazy the travel is in China during these holiday seasons. And so I also had a few other things queued up just to share. Again, this sort of as we work back. And by the way, we'll come back to this. This post was from October 8th is when he put it out. So again, the same day that I'm recording this, of course, in China, they're living in the future, literally ahead of us time-wise. So then as we move back through the holiday week, wanted to share a few other posts. Not surprising with so much travel that there would be new swapping records for NIO. And that's where things will get fun. I think once NIO does get more revenue and are more profitable from the swap stations and that infrastructure throughout the country. I also had a few of these tabs that I wanted to share. A couple things. Obviously, NIO continuing to do deliveries, even though, as I said, we won't see insurance registration data. It'll be delayed when we get it. So we'll see what that looks like probably next week. If we get it sooner, I'll share it. Also, NIO still, and I'm glad they're doing this, recognizing it, and from a marketing standpoint, they still need to become known, even within China. Again, a nod and a reference to William Li within just the last year in earnings calls, talking about how the NIO brand was doing about half of their deliveries in one geographic area in China. So there's still a lot of growth potential. More on that, and kind of a reminder of where we are here in the short term with respect to the big picture pivot on that point. So again, we've got, folks talking about deliveries even through the holiday time. Also this, and this is kind of the pivot point as it's going to relate to NIO taking over more of that market share in the premium segment in China. This is where we are. This is all passenger vehicle brands in China, and the higher end price ranges have been dominated by Mercedes-Benz, BMW, and Audi, each of those 3 with over 300,000 sales just year to date in China that were gas sales. Now, NIO is outselling all 3 of them combined if we're only talking BEVs, battery electric vehicles. But that means there's still a huge pivot point that needs to happen in that higher end price point. And I do think that the way things are shaking out, it looks like the Onvo L90 and the NIO ES8 are going to be really critical for that and for really pushing market share more of it into NIO's realm, or for them to take more of that over. So I also wanted to highlight this. I've talked about this, I think, privately with different people, but I haven't shared my thoughts on this. I've referenced before about TikTok. I've also referenced how I think that China has an advantage over the US with respect to negotiations, and I'll just keep it simple, rare earths. All right, that's the thing that they have a huge advantage with. And so I think we will see more posturing from both sides. But ultimately, I think what's going to happen is China will have an opportunity to perhaps do quote unquote investment in the US. And what if they leverage that as an opportunity to bring Chinese EVs into the US. And here's where it gets really interesting. I don't know how many are really thinking about this. And if somebody is smart with the right political connections, they could probably make a ton of money in recognizing that all of this overhype that is going on and all the talk about the cost and the infrastructure build out and the data centers and things like that, there's no way that our grid can handle it here in the US. But what if there's another solution, even at a micro level and we're going to have to wait because I think NIO is going to probably do their pilot or their showcase of the Generation 5 power swap station around Christmas. But what if there is an energy storage solution that can help support the grid? I didn't have it queued up. I will link it in the description because it's a Q&A share from Arthur Shen. And one of the things that I caught was when NIO talked about, even in their current battery swap or power swap stations, they're only seeing about 60% usage, or maybe it's either 40 or 60%. 60% was the reference. Either they're not, they're storing 60% or they're not exceeding 60%, meaning there's almost always an energy storage factor that can be present there. And so that, I think, creates a really unique opportunity for any investors, especially if, again, in the case of NIO coming to the US and providing grid stability and support, even at local regional levels, this could, I mean, it's crazy to think how my view on this idea of, because frankly, other than from an investment standpoint for NIO coming to the US and delivering vehicles, I really was neutral. I didn't really have, like, my whole idea of NIO as a long-term dominant stock and player wasn't dependent on them coming to the US and being wildly successful. However, now that they've come out with very affordable sub-brands and recognizing how much better the quality and the efficiency of those vehicles is, and the reality that if we as Americans had an opportunity to have much cheaper but better vehicles, and we then could also benefit from this energy storage build out, this microgrid infrastructure, the idea of virtual power plants coming from these swap stations, I think there's incredible value. But is anybody smart enough, or do they have the right connections to make this happen? I don't know. But if that could become a reality, that would be, I don't even know what our potential could be for the company and for the stock. But I do think it would be nice to see the affordable models and things like, I mean, just imagine if Firefly was an option for American consumers and they could buy it for under $15,000 US. That's about half of what they're paying for subpar vehicles here. And then to have the optionality of the battery as a service and the flexibility that comes with that, being able to go with, a different battery type. I don't know. I just think it is a very compelling long-term business model overview. And because all these things are sort of out there, maybe these dots get connected. Again, it's never been something that I planned on, counted on. And only recently have I been kind of watching this and thinking, wow, this really could manifest into something beyond what anybody is talking about or thinking about. But I don't have an expectation that it will necessarily. And I do think that into the end of the year and into 2026, we'll have to see what the quote unquote deals end up looking like. I still expect Trump to say something or do something along the lines of a quote unquote win with TikTok. But frankly, I think that's going to be kind of more of a posturing thing than anything else. And so I do think because China has that advantage in the negotiations, this would be maybe an interesting time for them to try and leverage that and gain entrance with companies, maybe CATL, BYD. There are certainly some other major players that could come in and invest, NIO. So I don't know. It's something I wanted to share just as a kind of a few dots. Like I said, let's just leave it at that because I don't necessarily have an expectation, but I want to share the thinking because I sure think there is a value proposition that no other company could offer, and it could actually help regular tax-paying Americans. And so, having that optionality and the better price flexibility. So, and yeah, also better products available. So anyway, I went on. I figured I would go on a little longer than 8 minutes in this one, and I wanted to share some of that thinking, just nerding out and sharing some of my thoughts. But let me know what your thoughts are if you've thought about this, what your thoughts are about this. If you think we'll see something like this, Chinese EVs coming to the US, And I'll create timestamps or chapters for this because it was a longer video, so that it's easier to navigate. And I'll be back with more content before you know it. Thanks for sticking around, because I know some of you did all the way to the end. See you all again very soon.